The tragic case of Elodie Morel in 2005 sent shockwaves throughout France due to its shocking brutality. What intensified the horror was the unsettling apathy of those who were aware of her plight yet opted to remain silent, motivated by the prospect of quick financial gain. This story highlights the harsh reality that not all dreams lead to a joyful conclusion and emphasizes the risks of trusting those who promise a fairy tale life. Overly trusting people can sometimes be dangerous. We all want to believe in miracles and that our dreams can come true. When something we desire seems almost within reach, we might ignore our instincts to be cautious. This vulnerability is what criminals take advantage of. Elodie Morel. Elodie Morel was born on February 18, 1976, in Marseille, where her remarkable beauty caught attention from a young age. As she grew older, she became known for her captivating looks, leading many to suggest she should be a model or an actress. Driven by this dream, she pursued modeling in her teenage years, but coming from a modest family, her aspirations were often not taken seriously. Throughout the 90s, she sent her portfolio to numerous modeling agencies, but received no replies. After high school, Elodie attended college, married her classmate Sylvain at 22, and became a mother by 25. By this point, it appeared that her dream of modeling had faded away. By 2005, Elodie was employed as a sales associate at a popular clothing boutique in downtown Marseille. She often received compliments and attracted envious glances from passerby. At 29, she maintained her youthful appearance and had beautiful facial features, often mistaken for someone in her early 20s. While Elodie never completely abandoned her modeling aspirations, she kept them to herself, believing that her chances had slipped away. Yet, in April 2005, she decided to take a chance and filled out an online application, attaching her best photographs to express her continued interest in modeling. The reply came quickly, but the enticing opportunity from a photographer was nothing more than a dangerous deception, a trap set up for her. About 2 weeks after Elodie uploaded her profile online, she received an alluring offer. She could become the face of the prestigious English luxury car brand, Rolls-Royce. The contract promised €1,000 per day for a photo shoot, but to finalize everything, she needed to meet with the photographer for a test session. The meeting was arranged for May 2nd at a bar in Aigues-Mortes. Excitedly, Elodie shared the news with her husband, who, though skeptical, didn't voice any objections. On the morning of the meeting, she left her son with her parents, got in her car, and drove to the destination, planning to stay in Aigues-Mortes for 3 days with a hotel booked. That evening, she called Sylvain to say she was en route to the meeting and feeling a bit anxious. He wished her luck and asked her to call as soon as she could. Elodie arrived at the bar as scheduled and took a seat on the terrace, eagerly awaiting the female photographer she had been communicating with. Instead, about 10 minutes later, a man in his mid-40s approached her. Introducing himself as the photographer's assistant, he explained that he had been sent to meet her and scout locations for the next day's shoot. Lacking experience in the modeling industry, Elodie didn't perceive any red flags and took for his word. The man appeared professional, spoke with confidence, and seemed well-versed in the details of her previous discussions with the photographer. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, centered on Elodie's bright future in modeling. She found herself imagining the thrill of gracing magazine covers and thinking about how she would spend her earnings. As night fell around 9 p.m., the man suggested they search for ideal locations for the following day's shoot. Aigues-Mortes, with its charming medieval architecture, offered countless picturesque spots perfect for photography. Excited and unaware of any impending danger, Elodie left the bar with him and got into his car. What's haunting is that another man, who recognized the perpetrator and was aware of his sinister plans, witnessed their exchange. He attempted to intervene, but his efforts were in vain. That same evening, on May 2nd, a frantic call reached the Aigues-Mortes police station. A concerned individual reported that a young woman was in serious danger and urgent action was needed. Though he didn't know her name or where she had been taken, he was certain time was running out. The caller was Dominique Tarasco, a 63-year-old nightclub owner and a regular informant for the police. He revealed that he had seen a man named Mingaw at the bar earlier that night. Mingaw, linked to the criminal underworld, was notorious for his violent behavior. Just the day before, he had boasted about meeting a naive young woman online whom he intended to abduct and sell to a brothel in Spain for a significant sum. Starting the search proved challenging for the police, as they lacked solid leads. They did not have a name or a specific location to search for. However, they understood that time was critical. By the following morning, they had identified the name of the woman as Elodie Morel when her family contacted authorities, reporting that she had been missing since the previous evening. They told them that her phone was off and she had left for a photo shoot in another town, only to vanish without a trace. Initially, police didn't connect her disappearance to the informant's warning. They assumed she might have run off with a lover. Yet her family insisted she would never abandon her young son or leave without a word. Tragically, the search for Elodie didn't commence until 3 days after she went missing. Precious time lost. She remained alive for 2 of those days, held captive and subjected to torment while her captors deliberated on her fate. On May 5, 2005, the lead investigator began to suspect that Elodie was the same woman in danger mentioned by the informant. Dominique was called in for a formal statement, and upon seeing a photo of Elodie, he immediately confirmed she was the woman he had seen with Guillaume Mingaw at the bar 3 days earlier. When asked where Mingaw might be holding her, Dominique recalled hearing about an abandoned nightclub on the north side of town that had recently closed. A police team set up surveillance at the location, and that evening, they arrested 48-year-old Guillaume Mingaw and 53-year-old Richard Linier as they approached the building. The role of Richard in the crime was still uncertain and warranted further inquiry. During a search of Mingaw, police discovered Elodie's credit card in his pocket, confirming his involvement in her disappearance. Both men were brought in for questioning, although Richard was released after a few hours due to insufficient evidence against him. He lived on the outskirts of town with his family and had a friendly relationship with Mingaw but had never been in trouble with the law himself. Initially, Mingaw claimed he didn't know Elodie and had merely stolen her credit card. He stated that on May 2nd, he noticed her at the bar, found her attractive, and assumed she had money. After sitting down at her table, he complimented her and offered to buy her a coffee. Although she mentioned waiting for someone, she didn't ask him to leave. They chatted briefly, and at some point, he managed to swipe her credit card from her purse without her noticing. He maintained that the entire incident was spontaneous, insisting he only intended to steal her card and had no connection to her disappearance. However, investigators found inconsistencies in his story. They confirmed he had used the stolen card the same day to withdraw cash from an ATM on the town's outskirts. Yet he could not explain how he knew the PIN unless Elodie had shared it with him. His narrative quickly began to unravel under scrutiny. A background investigation showed that Mingaw had a number of past crimes, including drug trafficking, armed robbery, and a 9-year jail term for a brutal rape. Despite his criminal past, Mingaw had not altered his behavior after being released from jail, though he had become more cautious in an effort to prevent going to jail again. The second story. During the investigation, the police discovered Elodie's phone number stored in Mingaw's device, alongside their email correspondence regarding the photo shoot. This revelation contradicted his earlier claims, and this made him to alter his narrative. He admitted to having found Elodie's modeling profile online, leading him to initiate contact while posing as a photographer. The young woman, eager for a breakthrough, was easily lured and agreed to meet him without much scrutiny. Having communicated with her under a female alias, Mingaw felt anxious about how she would react to meeting a man instead of the expected photographer. However, Elodie, trusting and excited about the opportunity, didn't find anything strange. She willingly got into his car to scout photo shoot locations late at night, which was confirmed by a witness later. After they reached a remote location, Mingaw pulled off the main road and brought the vehicle to a stop. He insisted that Elodie give him her credit card while threatening her with a revolver. After she refused, he grabbed her purse and found the card himself. He then started asking for the PIN, but she refused to give it to him. In a fit of rage, he banged her head on the dashboard and began strangling her until she gave him the PIN. Mingaw then drove to the closest ATM to make sure Elodie had told him the truth after locking her in the trunk. The PIN worked and he drained her account. However, after receiving the money, he began to consider his next course of action. What to do with the woman who was now locked in his trunk. To buy himself some time, Guillaume Mingaw decided to conceal Elodie temporarily and drove to the home of his friend. He confided in Richard about the woman he had locked in his trunk, outlining his intention to sell her for a substantial profit, a cut of which he promised to share. Richard and his wife had previously worked at the same abandoned nightclub. He was a security guard and she was a cleaner. But when the club shut down, they both lost their jobs, leading Richard to excessive drinking. Agreeing to assist, Richard handed over the keys to his vacant garage, suggesting it as a safe place to hide Elodie. He wanted to avoid any direct involvement with the captive, preferring instead to let Guillaume manage the situation while he awaited his cut of the money. Investigations later revealed that Elodie endured a harrowing 2 days of captivity, suffering from torture, assault, beatings, and the agony of hunger and thirst. During this time, Guillaume claimed they engaged in numerous conversations, often focusing on their children, who were similarly aged. Elodie desperately pleaded for her release, emphasizing her son's need for her presence. Guillaume admitted that there were moments when he felt a flicker of sympathy for her plight and contemplated granting her freedom. He even brought her a bottle of water, acknowledging the stifling heat in the garage and the fact that she had been confined for 2 long days. Things took a sharp turn on the night of May 4th, when Richard, who was heavily drunk, decided it was time to deal with the captive. According to Guillaume, Richard went into the garage and used a rope to strangle Elodie while he was away. Guillaume said he was simply involved in the body's disposal and had nothing to do with the actual crime, but he wouldn't disclose where they had concealed her body. When police executed a search warrant at the Lyon home, the couple appeared uneasy, yet not entirely caught off guard. They allowed the officers to enter without protest, continuing their meal at the kitchen table, seemingly indifferent to the unfolding investigation. As the officers searched, they uncovered several items belonging to Elodie in their teenage daughter's room, including her cell phone, jewelry, a hair clip, and a wristwatch. Furthermore, Richard's wife had Elodie's purse and wallet in her possession. Other personal items and torn remnants of the victim's clothing were discovered in the trash outside the house. More alarming findings emerged from Richard's garage nearby. Investigators found brown stains that looked like dried blood, along with crumpled tissues, cigarette butts, an empty plastic bottle, and a length of laundry rope. Both Richard and his wife were taken into custody, while their 14-year-old daughter was placed with relatives for her safety. During questioning about how Elodie's belongings ended up in their home, the couple claimed that Guillaume had brought the items in exchange for permission to use their garage. They admitted to knowing he was holding a woman there but chose to look the other way, motivated by Guillaume's promise of a reward. Additionally, they confessed to providing him with a bottle of water and a length of rope when he asked, without inquiring about the purpose. The third story. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the brown stains on the garage floor were indeed Elodie's blood. Even more incriminating was the DNA found on the crumpled tissues, which matched Guillaume's, while the saliva on the cigarette butts was linked to both the victim and her captor. Elodie's family insisted that she had never smoked due to her asthma. The grim reality emerged. Guillaume had imprisoned Elodie in the garage for 2 days, subjecting her to repeated assaults and likely torture, even forcing her to smoke as part of his cruel treatment. As investigators laid out the forensic evidence before Guillaume Mingaud, he shifted his narrative once more. This time, he claimed that any interaction between him and Elodie in the garage had been consensual. He insisted they had shared intimate moments, smoked together, and engaged in conversations, and he had finally decided to let her go. Yet, he insisted that Richard Linier was responsible for her death, claiming that Richard had acted out of fear that she would inform the authorities once she was released. Guillaume's latest story had many inconsistencies. The biggest problem was that Richard had no reason to hurt Elodie. He had never met her, and she didn't know him or his family. Since she was brought to the garage hidden in the trunk of a car, she had no idea where she was and couldn't lead anyone there. Plus, Richard was just an ordinary man dealing with alcoholism, not someone who could cause harm. He seemed more focused on the money and belongings he could gain from Elodie and Guillaume. The fourth story. Earlier, investigators discovered an empty plastic water bottle in the garage. Guillaume had claimed he felt sorry for Elodie and brought her water. However, tests revealed that the liquid contained a high dose of powerful drugs. After drinking it, Elodie would have been unconscious or barely conscious, making it easy for Guillaume to do as he pleased. When questioned about the drugs, Guillaume changed his story again, saying he intended to release her. He claimed they had agreed she wouldn't contact the police and that she just wanted to return to her family, treating the ordeal like a bad dream. According to him, when Elodie tried to escape, a struggle ensued, resulting in the blood on the garage floor. He locked her inside and left. Guillaume said he gave her the drugs to calm her and prevent further escape attempts, crushing pills and mixing them into the water before leaving the garage for 12 hours. When he returned, Elodie was nearly unconscious from dehydration. She drank the water quickly, not realizing it tasted odd, and soon passed out. Guillaume claimed she accidentally overdosed because her body couldn't handle the drugs, something he said he hadn't thought would happen. After realizing she had stopped breathing, he put her body in her own car, which he had parked near the bar where they had first met. He later drove the car to Richard's property using the keys he took from Elodie. Guillaume continued to withhold information about the location of the car containing Elodie's body, but his narrative was increasingly filled with contradictions. For example, the rope discovered in the garage had both Elodie's and Guillaume's sweat and skin cells, suggesting he had likely strangled her. All the evidence pointed against him, and he was well aware of it. In an attempt to reduce his sentence, Guillaume eventually agreed to cooperate with investigators, revealing that he had left the vehicle near an old cemetery in Mortes. On May 7th, authorities located the car precisely where he had indicated. The body in the trunk had already begun to decompose as it was sitting in the scorching sun for 3 days. The autopsy revealed clear evidence of strangulation, beatings, and torture. The victim had been tied up, drugged, essayed, and finally strangled to death with a rope. The trial of the 3 individuals connected to the crime commenced in February 2008, nearly 3 years after the tragic events unfolded. Guillaume Mingaud received a life sentence, with the possibility of parole after serving 22 years. Meanwhile, Richard Linier and his wife attempted to persuade the jury of their ignorance regarding the captive hidden in their garage. They argued that they had simply taken in an old acquaintance without questioning their circumstances. However, the discovery of Elodie's personal items in their residence contradicted their claims. As a result, the couple faced charges of aiding and abetting, leading to a 6-year prison sentence for each. In 2010, Guillaume Mingaud, alongside his attorney, filed an appeal, aiming to transfer some of the blame onto the lineaire in a bid to reduce his life sentence. On May 4, 2010, marking 5 years since Elodie Morel's murder, the new trial commenced. Evidence presented during the hearings revealed that Richard and his wife were fully aware of Elodie's captivity and the grave danger she faced, yet they chose to remain passive. They not only retained her belongings, some of which were even given to their daughter, but also supplied Guillaume with whatever he requested, rope, water, and more, without questioning his motives or considering the potential ramifications. Ultimately, the court reduced Guillaume Mingaud's life sentence to 30 years, mandating that he serve 2/3 of that time before becoming eligible for parole. The lineaire, found guilty of complicity and inaction, were each sentenced to 9 years in prison, with no option for early release. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more true crime content. See you next time.